Hello! Sorry about that. That was just a tech fail, but we are back. So part 2 of tonight's little catch up with you guys. So I think as we sort of were on the subject of wrestling, we might as well continue on that. So obviously we're saying that like my memory of it from childhood is just how massive the arenas were and how crowded it was. And obviously that's not going to be the case tonight. So we're like, you have explained this to me, but I don't really get it.
Performance Centre, which is essentially a fancy gym, sort of posh training facility that they've got.
So will there be any
very
audience?
Small, no audience,
none at all.
None at all, and this is why you should watch it, even if you don't like wrestling. It's just gonna be a weird experience. It's basically the only live event still happening.
Yeah,
at this point.
It is interesting because like obviously. The wrestlers can't social distance.
Yeah,
they're going to have to get up close and personal with each other.
I say live event as they've actually pre-taped it for the first time in the event's history. It's normally live. They taped it, I think, last Thursday. And
is that why they've split it over 2 nights, just because they can?
I think that's one of the reasons, and just because they think it's going to.
It's normally like 7 hours long. Did you say?
And it's going to be about 3 hours a night, so it's a long event. So maybe you don't want to stick for it all.
7 hours.
I would say, like I say, there's no other music or sporting or entertainment event of this scale still happening in the world right now. So it's kind of a unique thing, and I think it's worth tuning into just on that score. And if you're thinking, well, I don't watch wrestling, I'm not going to know who anyone is or who I'm going to be rooting for.
You'll be in the same boat as me.
WWE are really good at making kind of hype packages, short videos that retell the kind of story and the build-up, so you know who people are going into the fights, you know what the stories are, so it's going to kind of spoon feed you that information. It's not for everyone, but I think, I'm not trying to persuade you all to become wrestling fans. I just think this is going to be a really weird, unique thing to check out.
If nothing else, morbid curiosity should get you to have a little glance, because I'm genuinely quite looking forward to it. Whether or not I watch 7 hours of it, that remains to be seen. But yeah, to be fair, I didn't watch any wrestling, knew nothing about wrestling whatsoever until I met you, and you've brought that into my life. Whether or not that's a good thing, I don't know. But to be fair, I have actually found it quite good to sort of, when there've been sort of matches on that you've been interested in, I have found myself sort of going, well, what's their beef then? What's going on here? Why does she hate him then? What's going on? Because I love the story, and they're very ridiculous, dramatic stories, and lots of betrayals going on, and it is quite soapy.
It's a little bit like reality TV in some ways, right? Kind of heightened, larger than life characters and storylines. And look, I'm not saying this is necessarily going to be good. It could be a car crash. It's going to be
an entertaining car crash, though, I think. Well, I think because so much of it I've noticed really is all about the crowd and how they react, and whether they're behind you or whether they hate you, and the wrestlers playing up to that. So either they're like a good guy and they're loving it, or they're a bad guy and they're like really like riffing off the like boomy, come on. And obviously there's going to be no one there. So they're just going to be like really macho posturing and acting like how are they going to do it? I'm fascinated, so I think it's going to be really interesting. And if you really are sort of missing your sport, there isn't they can't have football matches, they can't have rugby matches, they can't have sort of a bunch of people gathering in arenas. But I guess for the most part, they do like groups, but it's usually a few people in a ring, not a great number of people. There's no way to socially, because if they all had to stay 2 meters apart from each other, it would be just, oh my god, I would watch that though. If they just have to insult each other and they're not allowed to touch, that would be hilarious. Because it would just be a roast battle then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be good.
That'd be quite fun. So yeah, I'm curious as to how this is going to go.
There kind of is a bit of that anyway, because they do the promos where they talk to each other and slag each other off. So there's
they're quite funny. Very entertaining. It is very entertaining. It's also very silly, but it's very entertaining.
It is very silly, but also if the idea you have in your head of wrestling is
it
is very silly, but it's great. But also, if your idea of wrestling that you have in your head is kind of a vague picture of 2 meaty, beefy men slowly waddling around the ring, hitting each other, like basically wrestling, like any other art form or any other type of theatre, evolves, and the things they do in the room now, the speed of some of the action, the athleticism and the high-flying moves that they do. It's really come on, especially in the last 20
It's very
10, 20
acrobatic
years,
at times.
Yeah,
and,
so you might be surprised how physical and interesting it is to watch in that regard as well.
Yeah, I was quite pleasantly surprised, actually, particularly by the women's wrestling, because that was something I didn't really have any knowledge of, because I sort of remembered when I was a kid, and like the very big characters, so basically like Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker, who still wrestles, by the way. How is that man still wrestling? Not Hulk Hogan. Well, barely. But I was like, oh my God, I've actually heard of this person. That excited me enough. But yeah, the women's wrestling, I particularly found, quite enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, women's wrestling is really
it's quite speedy and quite dramatic, and some very impressive moves that do look quite brutal. So if you like a cat fight, get in on it.
If you have watched wrestling in the past, The Undertaker is a name that you might recognise. Another guy that is going to be in it that you might recognise if you were watching wrestling about 15, 20 years. Yes. Tonight or tomorrow. I'm not sure what night, what matches are happening. Another guy that's going to be in it over the weekend is John Cena, who, if you don't know from wrestling, you probably know from the movies.
From films, yeah.
And he's going to be doing a really weird match called a Firefly Funhouse match. And if you're thinking, well, I don't know what a Firefly Funhouse match is.
No one does.
We don't know. I watch every week. Until it happens, no one knows. It's going to be something really weird.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it? Firefly Funhouse match.
He's fighting a guy called The Fiend, who broadcasts as Bray Wyatt, a sort of kids show from the Firefly. I can't explain it, but they'll do a hype package, so they'll explain it.
Yeah, and they're not charging for it either, which normally you do pay for WrestleMania, don't you?
Yeah, traditionally was the pay-per-view model you'd paid. Now it's on the WWE Network, a lot of which you can get for free, but if you sign up for a free month's trial, then you can get WrestleMania absolutely for free. There's a load of interesting documentaries and other stuff on there as well, but you don't have to stick with it. You can always cancel that.
Just watch WrestleMania and go, what the hell is this? But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I think maybe I like it because it's storytelling, but with some really cool stage combat stuff going on. So yeah, I'd say give it a go. If not for anything else, just curiosity. This has not happened before. This is unprecedented, so it'll be interesting. So I think that's suitably covered wrestling.
Covered wrestling.
So to go on to a nice little critique of old Matt Hancock, our what's his name? Chief Medical. He's the
health secretary.
Health secretary. Yes, he's not the chief medical. He's the health secretary. He's had a couple of fails. As I mentioned previously, he had to self-isolate for a while because he had mild symptoms of coronavirus, and he did test positive. He did definitely have it. So the World Health Organization has given advice that anyone showing symptoms should self-isolate for 14 days. The British government have decided 7 will do. Which, right, fine. It's not fine, actually, that's really stupid. But okay, that's what they've said. So, to sort of practice what they preach, they've kind of then, when they've caught it, they've kind of gone, well, I can't really stay off for longer than 7 days, although Boris has been suspiciously quiet. I imagine everyone was just saying to him, pretend you've still got symptoms, lie low, because you're useless. And he's also probably he's just sitting there watching Netflix, watching Tiger King in his pants. And then when someone goes, Boris, sorry, sir, can we maybe ask you something? Very dramatic coughing.
If he is being told to lie low because he's useless, that doesn't explain Matt Hancock.
But yeah, Matt Hancock returning to action, I imagine is so that they are practicing what they preach and he's back at it after the 7 days. However, one massive fail I'm not sure quite where this was, but it was opening up one of the temporary hospitals which are popping up in various cities. I assume it's one of the London ones. I'm not absolutely certain on that. So I say temporary hospitals. They aren't hospitals as such because they're not doing anything other than looking after corona patients. So they're corona hospitals, basically. So they're ventilator units, but for the capacities are several thousands and it will relieve the pressure. That's all good. So he went along to an opening of one of these and sort of throughout the entire proceedings was pictured several times blowing his nose, sort of putting his tissues back in his pockets, then touching his face, coughing, spluttering. This is in a corona hospital
So he's
within
still-
7 days of being tested positive for coronavirus.
Still symptomatic. Now,
Basically still symptomatic,
if you're
yeah.
going, well, legally, the British government have said 7 days, I need to return to work.
Not if you're still showing symptoms.
Especially, like, common sense would prevail. You would think if your job involves visiting hospitals.
Yeah, you'd
Like,
think...
It's bad enough if you're, working in retail or whatever it might be at this time, but don't visit hospitals if you have had
considering
a confirmed case of coronavirus and you're still coughing and sneezing.
Yeah.
And if you do, don't be touching your face.
Yeah.
And it's all a...
It's really bad. And like, to be fair, somebody I loved this. You've got to love the Tory bots that are commenting on these things. Somebody said, "You never know. He could have just been overcome with emotion." It's just like, you reckon? I don't reckon.
Maybe
I guess you could be blowing your nose just for ordinary blowing your nose purposes, but I would say err on the side of caution anyway, and maybe don't go somewhere where they're going to be. Although I guess the argument would be, well, everybody there's going to have corona as well. But it just seems like a bad idea to me. But anyway.
It's terrible. What's the other stupid thing that is
Well, the other stupid thing, oh God, it's such a fail. And literally all it would have taken would have been some advisor somewhere. And actually the worrying thing is I don't think they know. But I think it was last night, I think it was Newsnight. But anyway, they're sort of discussing it. And a quote that he said, in terms of the UK death toll, yes, these figures do include 4 doctors and some nurses. Some nurses. They're not even counting how many nurses are dying from this. Either that
Just
or
some.
they are and he just doesn't care. But basically, just say deaths of doctors and nurses are included in these figures. But the fact that you're not counting the nurses just shows how little regard you have. These are real people who are giving up their lives, knowingly giving up their lives, looking after people who are sick with this, and you are not even bothering to count or to acknowledge them.
Well, there's 3 options, aren't there? There's 1, he doesn't know. 2, he does know, but he doesn't care. Or 3, the numbers are so distressingly high that he doesn't want to tell us. And there's none of those is a good option. I don't know, at this time with the government, I don't know if now's the time to be changing things up. Maybe there's an argument for consistency or whatever. Maybe now is not the time to be calling for resignations, but I certainly think that we need to be remembering all of this for what happens afterwards.
Yeah, it's a strange time, because also today, I didn't actually think to mention this, but yes, the successor to Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party has been announced. I also kind of thought, whatever you think about Jeremy Corbyn, we won't get into that, but I also kind of thought maybe now wasn't the time to be doing any big change-ups in leadership and electing new cabinet ministers, because whoever is elected as the new shadow health minister is going to have to suddenly be like super au fait with everything that is already going on. I kind of thought maybe consistency would be helpful. Perhaps, I guess, they will look to their predecessors for advice passing things over. But yeah, but anyway, so that went to Keir Starmer, and the deputy went to Angela Rayner. I'm not going to go into what I think about that. Wasn't who I voted for, let's just put it that way. I did vote for Angela Rayner, actually, but not for Keir Starmer. But anyway, yeah, just kind of thought now wasn't necessarily a great time to actually switch things up, because there's too much going on to have sort of job changes and just upheaval in an already mental time within government. So that's a strange one, but it happened today anyway.
What we should say is, well, whoever you wanted to be Labour leader, if you are a person who's interested in the Labour leadership, whoever you wanted, Keir Starmer's in now.
Yeah.
Definitely better than Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Irrespective.
Yeah.
Never let anybody tell you that the Tories have been doing a good job.
No.
At this time, and we won't go into all the details here, but there are so many examples or stats we could put up to show that they've been botching this horrendously, and we need to get them out at the next possible opportunity. So let's get behind Keir now, I think.
I think get behind Keir, whatever you think. I think we've got to get beyond the opposition and get the Tories out, basically.
Something I felt very self-conscious and self-aware about. how seriously I was taking myself. Guys, listen to our opinions on what you should do. I'm sure, as two very influential voices.
Upwards of 20 people sometimes watch this, I'll have you know.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're all waiting to
find out what we think.
Advice. Yeah.
But yeah, sort of jokes aside on that, yeah, just whatever. We've just the Tories have been an absolute shit show throughout all of this, and people are still giving it the. Oh, well, they're doing their best under impossible odds, and it's sort of like, they made it difficult. Like, they've messed this up. That's why, it would have been difficult for anyone, but they have consistently been underprepared, not followed advice, and it's just been, one catastrophe after the other, any one of which I would say should be grounds for resignation. Saying no to joining the EU scheme on ventilators, where you're going to basically have quick access to thousands of ventilators just at a time when we're desperately going to need them. And they first of all, they said no, then they said they didn't get the email, then the EU said, if you want in, you can still be in, and then they said no. So it was never about anything other than not wanting to spend the money on ventilators. I can't see any other way of looking at that. They have knowingly said no to ventilators. And that's just one example of absolute ridiculous calls they have made. And either through inactivity or ignorance, or, so at best, it's stupid and misguided and mistaken, which is not what you want anyway. At worst, it is knowingly and callously choosing to let people die that don't have to.
And GPs and doctors and people on the front line have come out and said that Boris Johnson is responsible for many deaths. So, if you weren't prepared to listen before the general election, listen now, because this is all the Tories' chickens coming home to roost. This is all the upshot of mistakes they've made, the way they've been slowly dismantling the NHS. We've banged this particular drum quite heavily over the past however many days, but and I'm sure a lot of it is preaching to the converted, and I'm sure a lot of you completely agree with us.
Well, one thing I have heard quite a bit of is people think, oh, don't politicise this. This is a tragedy. It's not the time for political point scoring. If ever there was the time for political point scoring, it is now, because you've got to hold the sitting government to account for its actions, and essentially it is not protecting the people. And if they don't look after the interests of the people, what are they there for? And it is clearly self-serving, it's clearly penny pinching, and it's callous, sociopathic, and it needs to stop.
More people are dying than need to die because of, a decade plus now of Tory leadership and Tory governments in this country. It's a tragedy, and it's a worse tragedy than it needed to be.
It was always going to happen.
Misrule. And that's just
it happening wasn't avoidable, but definitely the results of it could have been happening. Well, look at Germany. Germany were testing early and have a fraction of the death toll, and many more thousands of tests have been run, because every time they found somebody positive, they contact traced, got all of those to isolate, and it's just not spread the way it has here. Here, they literally went, oh, we could lock down, but carry on, have at it, and by the way, we won't even test you. But anyway, right, I will leave that sort of there.
You mentioned that there was some good news.
Yes, I want to end on that, actually, because it's sort of, clinging to small positives. But today, for the first time since it all really got really bad in Italy, today, for the first time, the number of people being declared recovered from coronavirus exceeded the number of deaths due to coronavirus for the first time since all of this kicked off. So they are just about over the worst of the peak and are flattening, if not decreasing. It's probably going to plateau for a while rather than decrease. But the tide is just about turning in Italy, which is, it's a small positive because obviously the death numbers are still high, and it does mean that people are still suffering with this and more cases are happening, but people are recovering, and it seems like it's not going to get worse, just judging by the stats. Obviously, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but that's encouraging. So I think that's a relatively positive note to end on, and we are, because we've done this in 2 parts, we may have actually gone over how much time we normally do, so sorry about that. Have you got anywhere to be? You don't, do you? Nobody does.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But we've got some wrestling to watch, so we
Yes.
will report back on how that goes tomorrow, and
Yeah, we'll see.
get
if
on
Ellie,
the wine in between now and then.
We will find out if Ellie, having watched Saturday night's wrestling, is willing to join me for Sunday night's wrestling.
Yeah, that'll be the good test. Who knows? Who knows? I might need more wine. Let's see. All right. Thank you very much, guys. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.